Dear Haverot, less than a month ago, we met hundreds of Wizo members from around the world on Zoom. Whether it is the corona pandemic or the Gaza war, it sometimes seems that there is some invisible hand trying to keep us from being together. That someday in the future, when the history of these years is written, these 4 years will be called the Zoom years. Seriously though, while it is so disappointing not to be able to meet face to face, I think that it is a testament to the strength of our movement that the pandemics and wars cannot and will not come between us, will never defeat the unity of our movement, our spirit, our sisterhood. Although we could not hold our EGM and MOR together in Israel, we are delighted to be hosting more and more missions and groups that are coming to show solidarity with Wizo and with Israel and experience firsthand what our nation has gone through since that terrible day of October 7th. I know that those among you who have come on such journeys can testify how deeply you were affected by being in Israel at this time, meeting the people, volunteering in farms, seeing the destruction and horror, cooking for soldiers, touching and being touched by Israel after October 7th. I strongly encourage you to keep visiting, whether in organized missions or individuals or group visits. In my presentation at the EGM, I summarized the first 4 years of my term as chairperson. Today, I would like to share with you a few of my thoughts about the coming years, how I see Wizo moving forward. First, though, I would like to express my profound gratitude for the incredible work you have all done since October 7th, and in particular, the outpouring of support you showed us from the very first hours. Within a few weeks, you raised and sent to us close to 20 million shekels. We have periodically reported to you on Wizo's activities during the war and our priorities in using these funds. But I would like to take this opportunity to give you a bit more detail and context. First of all, I want to remind us all, as emphatically, as strongly as I can, that the war is still going on. I am taping this message a few weeks before the MOR, and at this time, fierce battles are raging in Gaza. Many soldiers are dying and being wounded. 132 hostages have been in Gaza for more than 100 days with no end in sight. The tension in the north is intense, and who knows where that will lead. Will there be a massive clash with Hezbollah, with rockets raining down throughout Israel? When will the hundreds of thousands of Israelis who have been displaced and evacuated from their homes be able to go back to Sderot, to Kiryat Shmone and the kibbutzim and moshavim of the south and north? When will the hundreds of thousands of IDA reservists will be released from their service and go back to their families and normal lives and hopefully back to a normal economy? In the first few weeks of the war, as your emergency funds started pouring in, it became clear that the war could be very long, with an extremely high level of uncertainty about nearly everything. How severely will our institutions be affected? How much revenue would be lost? Could we expect the government to help the way it did during COVID pandemic? And many more similar questions. There were immediate needs that had to be addressed, and the funds you sent were critical to our ability to do this. For example, the IDF Front Command authorized daycare centers to reopen only if their safety rooms and shelters were in compliance with all the regulations. This required us to immediately invest significant funds to make critical repairs in dozens of daycare centers. We also had to invest in our shelters and safe rooms in youth villages, schools, Wizo Israel centers, and our women's shelters all around. We hosted 150 evacuees in Wizo Gan Vanov Youth Village for the first few weeks of the war. Other evacuees are being hosted in our parents' home and in Wizo Harasim. All this costs money. We provided emergency assistance to hundreds of women and children in our safety net program who were thrown into economic and psychological distress. Our high school students were forced to stay at home for weeks, and we had to provide with many of them with tablets and laptops, and otherwise they would have been cut off from their classes and education. We funded the transportation cost of bringing Wizo high school students to volunteer in farms suffering from a severe shortage of workers. You will remember that only a few days after October 7th, we convinced the Army and government to allow us to open 11 daycare centers serving hospital staff around the country. For weeks, these were the only daycare centers operating in Israel, and we were not immediately reimbursed by the government for this, and of course not for the full cost. We have concluded numerous emotional and professional support activities and workshops for our teams in our daycare centers, schools, villages, and shelters. We reinforced our physical and technological infrastructure in Wizo headquarters, making necessary preparations for disaster scenarios. These are some of the examples of the kinds of needs, large and small, that we have been able to meet thanks to the funds from the emergency campaign. But as I mentioned, we are spending these funds very carefully with an eye to the future. With a longer war ahead of us, with Israeli society in collective trauma, unprecedented in our history, we know that not only will there be great needs in the near future, but new and urgent needs will be developing all the time. If we want to be able to respond to these needs, we need to conserve our resources. We know that the psychological and emotional effects of October 7th and the war will deeply affect us and the people we serve for months and years to come. We will need these resources to help the youth in our schools and villages, the women we care for and protect, the babies, children, and families in our emergency and welfare frameworks, and our professional teams everywhere. There are so many needs for bomb shelters and safe rooms in many of our institutions. For example, Beit HaKerem campus has no bomb shelters at all, and we will need to invest in this and in other places in the area. Again, in the area of domestic violence, which is always very sensitive to social crisis, the first few weeks of the war saw a strange and relative quiet, but soon enough, numerous factors contributing to the tension and violence in the home and family began to converge. Economic stress, severe disruption in life routines, children's at home, rocket attacks, and of course, the overall ongoing inescapable trauma of reliving October 7th day after day, and the destruction and death that always comes with war. Not to mention the conditions in which tens of thousands of families have been living for months, crowded into tiny hotel rooms, they and their children torn away from their homes and lives, often with very little to do. Not surprisingly, all this resulted in a huge spike in domestic violence and created a double trauma for the women and children in our shelters and those we care for in our safety net program. Here is a testimonial of one of these women. I am 30 years old, so I left the shelter 2 months ago. I was in a very, very violent relationship, and now I got out. I recovered from it. But that Saturday, October 7th, I was actually in Ashkelon. So as soon as I heard that there was an invasion, I lost myself. I was absolutely terrified. I didn't know what to do. And somehow I got out of there, but all the time, fear. For almost 2 weeks, I didn't eat, I didn't drink, and I had a very, very hard time. These are some of the challenges that lay ahead in months and years to come. And we will continue to be very cautious and careful about the way we administer and spend this precious resource that you had worked so hard to raise. Looking for the next few years from a strategic point of view, we will continue to focus on doing what we do even better on the one hand, and on innovating new services and programs on the other hand. This, after all, is the Wizo DNA. We identify needs that the government and other civil society organizations have not addressed, and we develop and implement responses to them. Eventually, we hope and expect the government to take responsibility for these needs, and will either ask Wizo to operate those services or take them over. At the same time, we will continue to place a financial stability and a constant search for new revenues for partnership for new sources of philanthropic funds. We will partner with you, our federations, to help you raise more money. We will continue to increase the funds we raise in Israel. We will continue to improve our marketing and public exposure, both in Israel and abroad. In the past few years, we have taken on a much more active and in some cases dominant role in the bodies that deal with the government and lobby in such areas as daycare and high school education. We will continue to invest in our human resources. We need to find the funds to improve the working conditions of some of our most critical, important professional staff, such as our daycare center teachers and the counselors in our youth villages. In the aftermath of October 7 and the great challenges of strengthening resilience and recovering from trauma, these needs are even more acute than before. In our daycare center network, we're trying to develop competitive advantage through innovative programs and services, and are seeking ways to reduce our dependence on the government. These are some of the key areas that we're determined to focus on in the coming years. In the business world, it is said that if you're not growing, you are dying. For an organization of movement such as Wizo, the paraphrase is, if you're not adapting, changing, and innovating, you are dying. I strongly believe this is true. I am very excited to begin the second half of my tenure as chairman of Wizo, and to tackle the challenges of the next 4 years with an incredible leadership team at my side. Our new elected World Wizo executive, with a mix of veteran, experience, and lifelong devotion to Wizo, together with new members with strong professional expertise in different fields. I am excited to work with our new president, Anita, and I'm sure she will bring dynamic energy and new ideas to her work with you. We're so very fortunate to have a strong and devoted leader of Wizo Israel, Ora Korazim, and our new treasurer, Dvora El-Hanati, with much experience and expertise. I would like to give special thanks and praise to Miri Pekin, who after completing 2 terms of service as chairperson of our audit committee, will be retiring. Miri brought great professionalism and strength and dedication to this important role and made a very important contribution to Wizo. I would also like to take this opportunity to express my deep gratitude to our outgoing treasurer, Gila Cohen, who has contributed so much to Wizo for so long and played a key role in steering our financial ship through the troubled waters of these last few years. On a personal level, Gila has been a tremendous source of support, advice, and friendship for me. Gila is the epitome of a Wizo woman, smart, devoted, competent, and kind, a true lady, a class act. Gila, you have earned the love and respect of all of us. We are blessed to have thousands of active and committed volunteers in Wizo Israel branches and second-hand shops, bringing our work and message to the grassroots in communities throughout the country. I am also blessed to work with a supremely talented professional team led by CEO Mira Menes, our division directors, and the leaders of our institutions in the field, our youth villages and schools, parent homes, our shelters, and of course, all of the 6,000 Wizo employees in some 800 projects and institutions. And then, there is you, my dear Haverot, the leaders of our federations around the world. I often wish that every volunteer and employee in World Wizo could spend a few days with you, watching how hard you work, getting a taste of the challenges you face every day, taking part in one of your events, feeling your energy and passion, witnessing the amazing things that you do with almost no professional staff. It is you that keeps the Wizo flame burning bright in dozens of countries on 6 continents. You are an inspiration to all of us, and together we will do ever greater things for our movement and Israel. Together, as I said, ביחד ננצח. תודה רבה. Thank you very much.